ladies and gentlemen. Well, you can think how embarrassed I am in speaking in English after Richard. He speaks such a good English. And thank you for this presentation, Richard. And on the other side, I can tell you what it means to see Richard working and managing with the politics and diplomacy in Byzantium. Is a real pleasure, and he managed so well that we were able to work and survive for 4 years in a project that has been pretty long one. Well, I decided not to prepare a paper for tonight, mainly because papers are boring, but on the other hand you will have to deal with my English, so this will be your problem. Well, Richard forgot to tell you one detail of the story of Zeugma. At that time, I had just finished a 2 years project in Jordan and Syria, mainly in Aleppo, that is north of Syria. And on my way back home, I said myself, I need 6 months in my house before going back. The day after, the phone rang, and was Richard. And Richard said, there is an emergency, we need to go to Gaziantep. I was thinking he was joking, and I said, yes, Richard. when are we going? And he said, this Friday. So we went back there together, and then we spent 4 years there. And the outreach in our field that is never enough. Is incredible how low is the sensitivity of people, authority, politicians, toward themes of archaeology and conservation and presentation. So I'm very glad to show you these pictures, and I thank again the American Institute for inviting me. I will jump from one technology to the other. I beg your pardon for this, but okay, let's start with Zeugma. Zeugma is in Anatolia. Zeugma in Greek means bridge, and in fact this was the only place where you could cross the Euphrates in the region. This can tell you how rich the town of Zeugma was. All the commercial trades from between the empire and the east passed through Zeugma. And that's explained why the houses there were so rich. Zeugma, unfortunately, was on the edges of the Euphrates that was interested by a big dam that produced in the year 2000 the growing of the level of the water 20 centimeters per day. Zeugma was discovered in the 90s by French and German archaeologists, and who spent 10 years in silent and small archaeological investigations. Then they realized in the year 2000 that the dam was a reality and that the water was starting to grow up 20 centimeters per day. Let me tell you that 20 centimeters are like this, and believe me, is very much if you think of water and if you think of the power of a huge lake like in the Euphrates. So it's not like a few liters of water that are surrounding you. It's a huge lake, 20 centimeters per day, every day. And this is a reality, and archaeologists knew that since 10 years before, but they didn't move one hand because jealousy, because of what I don't know what. But anyway, they didn't tell anybody by the moment that they got panic. In the year 2000, they started to remove everything from the site. I mean, not only objects, but mosaics, wall paintings, blocks of stone, and everything that was in their possibility was removed, which is something that, from the point of view of a conservator, is terrifying, because everything you remove from the site with no skills, with no resources, with no professionalism, is something that you kill, you destroyed. And luckily, in the year 2000, the story went on the hair of a journalist of the New York Times. They published an article that immediately was answered by David Packard of the Packard Humanities Institute, San Francisco, who immediately allocated a great sum of dollars to organize an answer to the problem. And that's where Richard entered, and that's where the telephone call arrived, start from. So Richard phoned me, we both went in Zeugma, and we decided to start to change things. And we decided to apply to an archaeological site a strategy. Can you imagine a strategy in an archaeological site? This is a revolution. So basically, well, what you see here is, this is one of the first pictures that I took when Richard and I went there. This is what we found. You can see the huge dam over there is not a joke, it's a serious thing. This is the lake, this is the beginning of the lake, this is the end of the lake, and this is how we found the excavation. All this was going underwater. And what surprised us was that these archaeologists, if we can call them archaeologists, were acting with no programs, no plans, no strategies, simply treasure hunting here and there and removing what they found. So basically the strategy that we decided to apply was this one. Approach the site as a full scale and not as by villa and villa, to develop 4 months rescue excavation in order to design and to draw a topography of the villa, and from the conservation point of view to remove, of course, mobile objects and very special revetment in mosaic and frescoes, but to protect, to consolidate and to rebury all the remaining things ready to be submerged, and at the same time to take care of most of what had been excavated so far by the previous excavations. That means to restore piles of mosaics that were in the garden of the Museum of Gaziantep. I'm afraid that tonight you will see how to restore a mosaic. But this is what has been asked to me. I hope this will be not too much boring for you. Anyway, some pictures of the site. So we sent there 25 conservators from Rome, and we organized some preventive conservation on site that consisted mainly in documenting what was coming out, consolidating it, removing few very special artifacts, but for the rest, consolidating them and protecting to go underwater. And as a protection, we decided to apply on mosaics and wall paintings the coccio pesto, that is the Roman mortar made for the cisterns and for the underwater structures, and then piling everything and covering everything under cubic meters of earth and stone, ready to go underwater. You have some examples. You see the white is a whitewash, is lime that consolidates the mosaic. On top of the lime, we apply the coccio pesto, that is this pink material is a lime-based mortar. This is lime and volcanic mixture. The characteristic of this material is that as much water there is, as stronger it became. So basically our idea is that the dam will not last forever. So the dam is only a small episode in the long history of the town. So we are doing this, we are simply protecting the remains in the town to go safely underwater, ready for the future when in 70, 80, 90 years the dam will be not active anymore, and we personally will be there to see the results of our work. And on the other hand, we must admit that we had no choice. I mean, we allocated there 25 conservators that at that time were almost 100% of the available market. The number of specialists in this field is very, very small. 25 conservators altogether is an event. So we did all what we could. We couldn't do more. I'm saying this because somebody said that, you should not let things go in underwater. And it's easy to say, but when you are there with the water that raises 20 centimeters a day, that's another story. So we tried to limit it, to prioritize activities in order to invest and concentrate our resources in what really was important. The rest was helped to go underwater and enjoy the fish of the Euphrates River. For example, this mosaic was protected, but then was attacked by looters, and in a second time we went back to remove it. You can see this is a plan of the strategy that we adopted to protect the coast. What you see in red is what we implemented in terms of protection of the coast. I have to say that there is, when an archaeological site goes underwater, there is no problem, because the conditions underwater are stable, and stability is the best guarantee for conserving things. The problem is the 3 meters of fluctuation zone, where the level of the lake, for operating reasons, go up and down, go up and down. That's the risky area. And there is where we concentrated our efforts with barriers, with stone, with bags. I don't remember how many trucks of stones we brought there, thousands. It took 3 months to arrange a satisfactory protection of the coast. And I haven't been there sincerely in the last years, but somebody told me that it's pretty acceptable. For when we were working there, few special artifacts came up, and we decided to lift and to remove them, like the mosaic of Achilles here, and Theonoe Achilles, that was removed from the site, working 24 hours a day, because the level of the water was very, very close. And this is not a joke. If you find yourself with not finished work, you are lost, because the water don't wait for you. These are our local specialists in lifting and carrying. So we spent about 6 months on site, and then we moved in Gaziantep. It is a town that is about 50 kilometers, 30 miles away. and where the museum is, and where we found the result of the previous excavation. What you see here used to be mosaics, and this is the result. Just to explain you the origin of the problem, what was done was to apply anything textile, newspapers on the surface of the mosaic, cut the mosaic in big blocks with no documentation, and bring the mosaics in the Museum of Gaziantep. This is what we found. At the end, we discovered that this was 800 square meters of incredibly beautiful mosaics. But at the beginning, we only found cubic meter of stratum of mosaics without any numbering or documentation. And so if you imagine the condition of this mosaic was a textile, some cubes still left there, and that's it. So you can imagine that the first operation we implemented was to understand what was there. So working from the reverse side, that is the one you are seeing, we started to try to divide the mosaics in groups. So saying this belongs to this belongs to that, this belongs to that. So when the mosaics were reassembled, the treatment started. In order to do this, we organized 2 laboratories in the Museum of Gaziantep, 500 square meters. Probably 500 square meters doesn't tell you that much because the difference in measures, but pretty large. 2 large laboratories in Gaziantep where we had the room for moving so big surfaces of mosaic. Then, when the single pavement were, let's say, rebuilt, reassembled, we decided to apply on the floor clay, a stratum of clay on which we positioned again all the pieces of mosaic as it was the original pavement. So when this repositioning was done, we removed the clothes and we started to look at what they really were. And when the mosaic was, the pavement was complete this way and the documentation was done, we cut the mosaic again as it was a removal of mosaic for the first time. I don't know if I explain myself, but in theory we reconstructed the mosaics in the lab on a clay layer so that we could move the pieces and we could remove the mosaic in pieces again and start the proper treatment in order to have, at the end, the mosaics applied on light panels that allowed us to put the mosaics on display in museum. We had a team of, we had 3 teams. One was a team from Rome, from our group, that was made of around 10 different nationalities. We had people from Italy, from France, from Spain, from Germany, from Portugal, from Brazil, from Hawaii, from Tunisia. Another group was a group from Turkey. Some of them were our former students. And then a third group was made of Kurds that were trained to be the future people responsible for the maintenance of the sites. So the people that you will be wandering, you will see wandering around are part belongs to our group, part to the Turkish group, and part to the Kurdish group. It was extremely important to coordinate the activities because conservators are normally used to restore one mosaic. In this case, we were restoring 4 mosaics at the same time, because the quantity, the number of the mosaic were many, the problems were huge. You can see this mosaic lay on reinforced cement. It's unthinkable, believe me, to remove the cement from the back. So this is the first treatment that consists in removing, in cleaning the reverse side of the mosaic in order to have clean stone cubes to be relayed on the mortar. We have many systems, all of them are violent and damaging, and this explains why we normally prevent to remove mosaics from the sides, because removing mosaics from the sides is always something very damaging. If you don't have alternatives, you go through this solution, but anytime you have alternatives, you better keep the mosaics on site with in situ consolidation. What you see here is the synopia. You see the red are the original lines that they made in order to manufacture the mosaic. The quality of the mosaic of Zeugma is extraordinary. This means that they were very rich and they used the best people to do mosaics. So they used the best technology. So we found all what Vitruvio and the others wrote on the books. The synopia, the division, the colors, everything was there. And when we cleaned the reverse side of the mosaics, these colors came out. What you see here is the result of an aspect of the documentation. Everything we did was, of course, documented, and the reconstruction of the original appearance of the mosaic is part of this documentation. This is one of the villas in Zeugma. You can see the richness of the mosaics. Probably, I suspect that the guy that owned this house knew how to live. The quality of this floor, can you imagine? These were simple floor for everyday life. So probably the lifestyle changed a lot in our time, but in the opposite direction. Can you imagine what was, go and clean the floors? This is what they used to say sometime. This operation you see here is the application of clay on the reverse side of the mosaic that let then us work and repair the damages that occurred during the lifting. The tesserae are original. We found the tesserae lost in the piles. What is not available, we produce using local stones. They use newspaper to lift the mosaic. This is unbelievable for us. And so the removal of the newspaper left on site tons of glue that need to be washed away. So you see, almost all the floor has been reconstructed on clay, and we are ready to cut it again for the following treatments. The glue is a natural glue, and well, of course, the cotton, the textile is a cotton, and in this moment we are doing a new lifting of the mosaic, just as if we were on site for the first time. This is the mosaic of Poseidon that was lifted from the site by a group of Turks, of Turkish people. They did not everything is planned. But anyway, people was pretty fast in coming, and this is a very old technique. This technique was used in the 60s, and I can tell you that the mosaic was destroyed by this, and so we did our best to save it. But the compression of the tesserae one against the other was terrible. So when the mosaic is opened, the reverse side will be cleaned, and then the mosaic will be cut in pieces and then assembled on new supports. Who believes that the work in conservation is acquired with classic music has a wrong idea of the line. You see, the pieces are ready to be reassembled on synthetic panels. So, to reassume, the mosaic, the pavement, the floor is cut in pieces that are not straight, so then you cannot notice the joints. This is an example. You can see how many pieces, 49 pieces. This mosaic was made of 49 pieces. So the reassembling starts with the production of a huge single piece of this material. This is the material of which the airplanes are done. Is aluminium honeycomb and fiberglass. Is extremely strong, stable, and light. So first of all, we produce one single piece with the same size of the mosaic. Then on top, we draw the limit of the pieces, and we cut the support according to the pieces. For example, one piece will be like this, the other one will be like this, and so on. The work planning is extremely crucial because with so many people working at the same time, you must define what you will do today, tomorrow, and so on. So you can let the mortar setting. So when the pieces are cut, they are prepared with it. This is a volcanic grid that will host the mortar that we will apply. The mortar is a material made of lime and dust, selected according to the original receipt. We made a scientific analysis in order to know which material they used, and we replaced them. So we first apply a liquid one, on which we applied a more solid one. So the composition of this is exactly of the original setting bed of the mosaic. Only doing this way we will be sure that material will be stable, because are compatible, because are similar to the original ones. When the support is ready, the piece is laid back. This is the reverse side, but nevertheless, look at the quality of the mosaics. It's astonishing. Mosaic is put back and is pushed into his new location. There is a bed of lime-based mortar. This is the central panel, of course. We have to start from the center and then work. This is a vapor. It's hot vapor that allow us to remove the canvas that we applied, and the mosaic comes out. And then a long work of integration starts. This is very similar of what they did in original to do the mosaic. You can see we don't need gym in the evening and go to palestras. Our ladies are pretty strong. When the central panel is made, two teams can work at the same time on the two different edges. And this was very important for us because to restore 800 square meters of this quality mosaics take years, not months. We organize also competitions in between teams. So basically we reassemble the mosaic in one big piece that later on will be dismantled. When the mosaic is reassembled, is left for a few months and then is dismantled. But before it's cleaned, because in fact the surfaces had never been cleaned before. This is a paper poultice with solvents that help us removing the incrustations and the dirt. Probably you noticed before that there were some area with burned sections. That was the result of the destruction of Zeugma in the 3rd century. This is the mosaic that you saw on the coast, the one that we were removing at the very last moment. And this is when it has been reassembled and restored in the lab. She's removing the glue. And after a few months, when everything is set, the mosaic is dismantled again, ready to go either in the museum or in the storage. So the fact is that any single piece can be moved by 2-3 people with no cranes, no machines. This is a temporary exhibition that we used to do in place in order to let people visiting and enjoying the mosaics. We always have been working with a site open to the public. As Richard said, this is something that we try to do, well, not we try, we do every time, because we believe that the contact with the public is a great resource for our profession, for the public and for everybody. I think that we never have to forget that as a conservator, as an archaeologist, we normally work with public funds. Public funds means the taxes of people. So this means that we work for people, and it's not an option for us to involve them and let them entering our labs, because our labs belong to them. And anytime we do that, the support that you get from them is huge, because they are surprised, they are interested, and they are willing to participate for the safeguard of cultural heritage. This is the new deposit that we arranged there. It's a very simple one. It costed a few $1,000s, but it worked pretty well. Then at the end of the work arrived, when the final documentation was needed, and all the pieces need to be photographed. We built up this bridge, temporary bridge, to organize a photographer set in that building. And you can see the railroad that we built looks a little, you see, handmade. In fact, it was, but it worked very well. And I can tell you that this was tested by the British Committee for Quality. They came and they said, this is the British Committee for Quality. And they declared the system proper. They came especially from London. So every single piece was photographed with a digital technology that today looks archaeology, but at that time we were extremely proud for that. Okay, so now if you have still some passion, I will show you some of the results of this work. And we will see together some pictures of the mosaic restored. This is Venus, the beauty of Venus. This is Dionysus Telete Skytos. I'm sorry I didn't put a scale on this, but this is a huge mosaic. This is big as this room. So the dimensions, I mean not the room in that sense, the room in this sense. The scale of the mosaic was really impressive. This is Methiokos and Parthenope. There is an interesting story on this. These two pieces were stolen and discovered in an apartment in New York by a Turkish archaeologist during a dinner party. And at the main time, all the surrounding of the mosaic was kept in the Museum of Gaziantep with a big question mark. It was really interesting, the story. So when we were working there, this archaeologist discovered the two pieces and he succeeded to have the pieces back. So in fact, we put the pieces back trying to solve the problem of the cutting and of the vandalism. This is Muses and Virtus. Even this is huge as this room. This is Satiro and Antiope. They are having fun. This is Perseus and Andromeda. You can see the results of the attack of the Sassanids to the town. This is the roof that burned and fell on the floor. This is god Euphrates. And this was a basin, was a fountain. So in origin this was to be seen underwater in the villa. Of course, being in the Euphrates. This is Poseidon. This is the big mosaic that you saw in Rome. Well, I think the quality of the figures is, don't need words. Oceano and Tethys. This is Theono and Achilles. This is the mosaic that you saw when we were lifting it from the site. And these are the tents. This is the wedding of Dionysus, and this piece was stolen 1 year before our arrival. There is a calendar in Turkey with this mosaic entire. This quality of figures, can you imagine? It's unbelievable. This happened when Zeugma started to become known. And that's explained why in the last year we work with the soldiers surrounding our work. This is the Synaristosai, the actresses. This is Daedalus. Even this, also this is huge. This is Eros and Psyche. Please notice the quality of this, the three-dimensionality of the crater. I think that Giotto came about 12 centuries later to start talking of these things. And this is Achilles on Skyros. This is the base of a fountain. And even here you can see the perspective of the architecture. Probably they knew what they were doing. And this is what is called the gypsy. Somebody say that this is Alexander, and many other stories. I will conclude with one of the 5,000 objects that we restored in Zeugma, that is the Mars. This is a bronze statue that was found hidden under stairs in Zeugma. And of course, being bronze required very special treatments. Conservation allowed us also to study the sculpture, so we learn about the alloy that were used, the techniques the statues was made, and we discovered, for example, that was made of, don't remember, 5 or 6 different pieces that then were reassembled together. Mars had in the end something that I don't know in English, una frusta. What is the English for frusta? What you use for having the horses running? Whip? Those are the joints. We saw this with an endoscope from the inside. The joints, you see the statue was made of these so many pieces, and then they were jointed from the inside so that you could not see the defect. defects that have been corrected during the manufacturing. Okay, so this is the Mars now, as it is in the museum. Yes, this is a frusta in Italian. All what you saw here, you can enjoy it if you go in the Sweet Gaziantep Museum. It's on display, and I think that it worthwhile the trip. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Roberto, for a wonderful talk. I know Zeugma, so I'm not going to ask questions, but I imagine some of you will have some. Please, Liz.
Do you have any total of the person hours that went into the rest here?
Pardon?
How much time, how many hours and hours of work?
Well, I know, of course. In general terms, what I can tell you is that we have been working there full-time, that means 8 hours a day or more, 25 of us for 4 years, non-stop. And, but what I think is more interesting is to notice that what the previous excavation did in 3 months in rescuing without no strategy costed 3 years of work to be fixed.
And just I would like, as I mentioned during your talk in the morning, since you have archaeologists and you have public here, just to repeat to us again that the best way in protecting heritage sites and benefiting from it as preventive measures. How can we prevent and deliver it for the future generation while using it in different perspectives? That's for the public and for the archaeologists.
Yes.
Hi, Mr. Torrey. The museum and downtown said they're actually moving to a new site. And the community has decided to move all the mosaics from the current museum site to the new one.
They are going to move the mosaics apparently to a new museum. How easy would it be to move the mosaics?
Is it a question, or you are saying that they will move the mosaic?
It's a question. They are
It's a question.
How,
Yes. Well, the final strategy of what we did is that the mosaic are assembled of several pieces. Each one has is weight no superior than 50 kilograms, 40, 50 kilograms. That means that can be operated between 2 to 4 people and put in boxes. That is in fact what we did, because we were ready to send the mosaics to Istanbul for an exhibition, and all of them were already packed in boxes. The reason for doing this is that as easy it is to move a mosaic, smaller will be the risk of damaging it. And doing this way, you can have a very small team of people that can operate very safely in moving the mosaics.
Can you say anything about those who created the mosaics, the makers of the mosaics? Did you recognize an artistic style or a hand?
Well, in reality, we have a name and surname.
Oh. Well, that's easy. Okay.
I'm joking, but I'm partially joking. In the case of Zeugma, we found 2 times written Zosimos, which appear in 2 floors in Pompeii, one in the Museum of Naples and one on site in Pompeii. So this Zosimo was really a star that used to travel around the empire at that time. And then we clearly saw 2 different typologies of ends. One was who was in charge of producing floors, and another one was who was in charge of producing pieces of art. Floors, but as pieces of art. And you can easily see in the picture the 2 differences. And for the rest, probably mosaics were something much more trivial than what we think today, because they were simply tiles. So the way today we go in a shop and and we decide the new tiles for our bathroom, they use they had a catalog and they use a new floor for their houses. At that time they were so rich. And another thing to keep in mind is that doing mosaics is something very fast. Today is a slow process to conserve mosaics, but to do a mosaic was very fast. If you look at a skilled mosaicist today, you are impressed how fast he goes. He produces about 1 square meter of mosaic per day. So if you allocate a team of 5, 6 people, you will have your room done in a week. Then more or less is what they take to apply tiles in your house today. So the perspective is very different. And we notice, for example, in St. Catherine in Sinai, that is where we are working now, that we spent 5 years to conserve the mosaic, and probably they didn't spend 5 weeks to do that. This is something that we are not used to think about.
I was also impressed by the incredible range of color in the tesserae. Do you have any idea, would they have imported some colors of tesserae, or were they all?
Not in Zeugma. I don't want to delude you, but the colors in Zeugma is nothing comparing, for example, St. Catherine. We have a palette of about 15 colors in Zeugma. In St. Catherine we have 35. And because this was private manufacturing, private commitment, in St. Catherine was Justinian himself that paid for the work. And all the tessera that we found in Zeugma were locally produced because were stone. So anytime you find stone mosaics, you can be sure that the origin is nearby. When you find glass or gold or silver, you can speak of imports. That is, for example, what is happening in St. Catherine.
First of all, thank you so much for saving this remarkable treasure.
Believe me, it was my pleasure.
And also, I wanted to know how much of this treasure was actually put down into the water.
This is a good question. Kilometers of square kilometers of mosaics, and of normal mosaic. I mean, we lift from the site in 4 months 350 square meters of mosaics against the 800 that were lifted before. And as a conservator, I am known to be the worst enemy of people who lift mosaics. But in front of those floors, I really could not say no. And so we decided to lift those mosaics. But I'm really exactly because I know what it means to lift a mosaic in Zeugma. I mean, how much you have to work and how tired you go when you go to sleep in the night. I can tell you that most probably what we left is still there safe. And then, if we look, for example, at the underwater archaeological park in Baia, in the Naples Gulf, you can see the mosaics. If you sail on the mosaic, you can see the mosaics underwater in perfect conditions, because they are stable under the water, so that will not worry us at all.
Naomi, a last question, then we'll let Roberto off.
Are the mosaics all a single deposit, or do you think that there might be an older mosaic maybe that was no longer interesting and somebody would put another one?
Well, this is a pretty common situation, but I don't think in Zeugma, because they had no problem of urbanization. They had all the space they wanted to build up their house. And in fact, anytime we lift a mosaic, we never found anything under. So probably this was something happening in big towns like Rome or in the central part of the empire, not so far away. Richard, I would let the lady there to lead.
I have two questions. One is about the frescoes. What happened to them, and how did you save the frescoes, or was it somebody else who was responsible for that?
We tried to be open as much as possible to our Turkish friends and colleagues, and so we tried to give room to them as much as possible. And because on mosaic they had no expertise, we did the work. But in fresco conservation, we found that the University of Ankara has a very good team of people very capable in conserving frescoes. So in fact, the project funded this team of Ankara that work in one of our 2 laboratories together with us. We gave them advices, but the work was implemented by them, and they made a great job, really. And even more, we are good friends.
I think we should invite Roberto to join you all for a reception upstairs and to thank him warmly for this Kress lecture. The first of his AIA series is giving another 10 on many themes. So don't forget the AIA, but most of all, I'd like to thank Roberto for an absolutely bedazzling lecture. Thank you very much.